Hey friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to bring you another coloring video. So if you've watched my last two videos in this mini series, you know that my friend Heather has lent me a big tote bag full of coloring supplies. So we've got a couple of adult coloring books in here and 4 different kinds of alcohol markers. And I am testing these out and seeing if any of them might compare to my beloved Copics. So in my first video, we did an overview of all of the different sets of markers that are in this tote. The last video, I did a review of the $5 18 count markers from Five Below. And in today's video, we are going to be testing out these markers here. This is an Amazon set, and there are 48 markers in here, and they were $12.99 when Heather purchased them. So there's a lot more markers in here to go from, and seem to be some bright colors. So I did go ahead and swatch all of these out so that we can kind of go through and see what we've got included in this set. So we've got, I did all of the skin tones into the purples, the kind of pinky purples into the darker purples. Then we've got all of the aqua blues into green. Then we've got like the end of the green into yellow, and then orange and red. And then the last sheet is all of the grays. So there's quite a wider range in this set, definitely, since we have more than twice as many markers than the Five Below set. And at first glance, it seems like there's quite a bit in here, although I will say that I'm still not happy with the variety of skin tones. And in this set, it's almost the opposite problem as with the Five Below markers. With the Five Below markers, we had multiple Caucasian skin tones that were almost identical, and really no darker skin tones. So there is the Five Below ones. So we have 3 that are almost identical, 1 that's just a little bit more pinky, and then 1 very, very light brown. Whereas in this set, we've only got 1 kind of peachy tone, which to me is not really a good skin tone anyway, because it's really more pink leaning. It's got a lot of pink undertone in that. It's more similar to this fruit pink from the Five Below set than any of the other more natural looking Caucasian skin tones. And then we've got all of these, which are great, don't get me wrong. I'm so glad that we have a better variety in this set, but there's really no light shades in this set. So I can see that there could maybe be like a dark and a medium, depending on, you know, what color skin you're trying to color, but there's not really a light. I can't imagine going from this to this to this. I mean, I just don't think that's going to blend very well, but we're going to try it. So that poses a problem right off the bat for me from this set. I also feel like the oranges aren't very well developed in this set. Like, I don't know how I would color a pumpkin or a fox. I don't, you know, these 2 are almost identical, which ironically, 1 is called yellow and 1 is called orange. And honestly, the yellow looks a tiny bit more orange than the orange shade does. There's also a few other ones in here that are almost identical. I would say the 94 brick brown and the 91 natural oak are very similar. 103 potato brown and 94 brick brown are again very, very similar. I mean, there's a subtle difference there, but not enough that I would find this like a well-rounded set. Pinks, those are a little bit better, although I don't see a huge difference between those. It's decent with the purples, although there's no lighter shade. I mean, there's obviously some lighter shades in this set, like this one. So I don't know why there wouldn't be a lighter purple in there. I don't know. Also, this turquoise blue and pastel blue are very, very close. I would rather have something that was a little bit lighter. Again, you know, there's nothing that I would really want to use for like a fairy wing or a glass or anything like that, because there's just nothing soft enough. Even though this is called pastel blue, I mean, that is dead on turquoise. That's not pastel in any way. Also, like this 50 forest green and the 61 peacock green are nearly identical. I don't know if I would be able to pick those out apart from each other on an image. No way. This 46 vivid green and the 43 deep olive green are again almost identical. So yeah, and a lot of these yellows have very little variation in them as well. I'm just really confused by who is putting these kind of sets together and picking out the color tones that are going to be included. And, you know, I've said this in my other two videos as well. You know, it's not in these companies' best interest to give you a complete set, because if there are more sets out there, they want you to purchase all of them to build your complete set so that you spend more money and they stay in business, right? That's just good business sense. But you still should have like some kind of range that should be more encouraging to add in new markers and rather not, you know, just frustrating. Like I said, especially those yellows. Tell me which one of these is supposed to be a dark, medium, light. I mean, I don't see it. They're almost all the same value. And that's how I feel with most of these color ranges. These reds also almost identical. What's supposed to be a dark, medium, and light? I just don't see it. So the only range that actually looks like it has a good amount of values throughout is the grays. I think the grays are fairly decent. We've got clear, light, mediums, and darks in multiple different values depending on how dark or light you want to go. I mean, you could definitely color dark, medium, light, dark, medium, light, dark, medium, light through all of those warm grays, and the same through the cool grays. We only have one green gray, which is kind of odd to me that was just kind of thrown in there. But I could maybe see this one kind of fitting between the CG3 cool gray and the CG7 cool gray. I think that could kind of fit right about in there and make a decent blend. So the grays are not too bad in this situation. I just wish that we had the same kind of range in all of the other colors. The other thing to note is that in this set you do get the 0 marker, the colorless blender. You did not get that in the Five Below set. The colorless blender does definitely come in handy. I use it a ton, so that's great to have it in this set. So that is my first impression just based on the swatches. So let's go ahead and try to color an image and see how we fare. Alright, so I've stamped out a couple of images from the same stamp set that I used in the Five Below video. It's the Hello Bluebird Fairy Garden. I didn't want to color the exact same images, but I did want the samples to end up being comparable to each other. So I did stamp similar images. I also did take just a little image from the Hello Bluebird Garden Party, just because we've got a wider range of colors, so I felt like we needed a few more images to be able to get a representation of more of the color palette. I am a bit nervous for this because I don't exactly know what I'm going to do about skin tone, and I don't have a lot of faith that it's going to turn out very well. I don't want to go quite as dark as this just because it is a small image, and I'm afraid that if I went with these super dark colors for her tiny little face that we would lose a lot of her features and you wouldn't really be able to make her face out, which, you know, then you wouldn't really see how cute it is. So I think I'm going to go something more like these three. I mean, like I said, I don't have a lot of faith that this is going to turn out super great, but we're just going to try our best. I wanted to give all of these markers a fair shot. So this style of marker also has the bullet nib. We went over this in the intro video. These are not my favorite. I definitely prefer the super brush nib, but I will make it work. And as I said in my last video, I have used these bullet nibs before when I used to color with Spectrum Noirs back in the day. Like the first iteration of Spectrum Noirs is what I had, and they had the bullet nibs. And then later they came out with the brush nibs, and I like swapped all mine out. I actually swapped out my chisel end for the super brush because I didn't use the chisel end ever. I still don't to this day after 14 years of coloring with alcohol markers, mainly with Copics. But I'm just going to blend that out now with the 103 Potato Brown, which is the next lightest shade. And she's got a really nice rich skin tone so far. No problems so far, but I'm really nervous because there's not really a next shade. You know, we're missing the shade that should happen between these two. You know, that's going to be a really far jump. So this is where I'm getting nervous about it. So we're going to go in with the 25 Salmon Pink. But yeah, I actually switched out my chisel nibs for the super brush nibs on those Spectrum Noirs so that I had those two rather than the chisel. Okay, this is not great. See, the problem is this lighter marker is so much lighter than the 103 Potato Brown that it is literally just pushing that marker away. The alcohol in this marker is pushing that darker pigment away. And so you're going to get like all of this blooming that we have on her right at the edge of that marker, the mid-tone, which does not look nice. And sometimes you can fix it a little bit by going over it with a second coat. So I will do that, see if we can make it work, because I do want to give you guys, you know, options if there are cheaper options out there that you can make work for your stamped images, because that is primarily who is watching my channel, is people who are coloring clear stamps and possibly rubber stamps, but mainly clear stamps these days. And so I'm just placing my second coat exactly where the first coat was, trying to pull that color out a little bit more, but it's going to be tricky. As soon as I come in here again with this 25 Salmon Pink, it's just going to start pushing again. It's a little bit better than the first coat, but now we're more deeply saturated, so it doesn't really look like a skin tone because this is just too pink toned. It doesn't have like a natural looking skin tone. So yeah, there's nothing I can really do to fix this. Unfortunately, it's just going to look like that because there's no other marker shade here that can serve as the gap between those. So no matter how many times I try to go over it, it's just not going to blend. It's just not going to work. So there's that. We're already off to not a great start, but maybe these colors will work for somebody who maybe doesn't color people. So we're going to keep going. I think I will try to use some of these darker browns for her hair because I already know that there's not enough variety in these yellows to try to do anything blonde. It's just not going to work. There's no dark, medium, or light in there. And none of these shades really go with any of the yellows either. There's just too far of a gap. The closest would maybe be these two, but this is so much more red toned and this has so much more brown tone in it that it's just, I wouldn't work. It's going to do the same exact thing that her face did. So we're going to go with the darker browns and see how that works. Okay, because they 94 and 91 are so close. I'm actually going to skip the 94 and do 98, 91, and 103, hoping that will give me a little bit more of a dark, medium, and light range. So I'm going to come in here with this 98 and add a few little dark flicks to the top of her bun. We'll do a couple on the bottom of her bun too to kind of add in some low lights there. We'll come in from the sides, from her bangs. So I'm not used to using the bullet tip, so my strokes are kind of off a little bit because it's a little learning curve to get used to that again. All right, we'll come back to that. So next I'm going to come in with the 91 and try to blend this out a bit. Still leaving some space in between for the highlight, which is going to pull it all together, at least in theory. So just kind of elongating those strokes and adding some in between, making them, you know, just eating up a little bit more of the white space there. Whew. And then we'll come in with our highlight shade and try to pull it all together. Just fill in any white space. Normally with hair I would use more than 3 shades. I would maybe use 4 or even 5 shades so that we really get a nice range, but there just isn't that option in this set. So I'm just doing the best with what we've got here. It's not great. It's better than her face, but we're going to move on. I want to try to give her some rosy cheeks, but there isn't really a lot of option. Like all the reds are way too dark. And then there really isn't a pink in this entire set, because this is actually called Violet. It's actually in the violet, in the purple range. But I think this is going to be our only option. This is going to be way, way, way too dark. And normally I use at least 2, sometimes 3 shades for a rosy cheek. But it looks like we've only got the one that will even make any sense whatsoever. So let's go for it. Will this even show up on her? I mean, it shows up, but it looks horrible. But it is what it is. Okay, let's move on to her dress. I think we'll go ahead and do purples since that's what we did on our first little fairy. Let's try vivid purple, azalea purple, and the vivid pink, I guess, although it's so close. I don't know. I guess I'll pull out the 84 as well and see if I can make something happen here. So let's go ahead and try to add some shadows in here on the back of her dress and around her little arm. Add a little shadow up under her collar. Add a little bit of shadow to the edges of the scallop of her dress. Maybe just pull this down just slightly. And then we have the 87. So these two right here are not a bad blend. I could definitely work with that. So we've got that. Here is where we're going to encounter the problem, I think. Yeah. This is not enough of a light tone for me to fill in the rest of the dress. The whole thing is just going to look so bright. So let's try throwing in the 84, and that doesn't work either. They're too far apart. Okay, so we're going to have to just cover over that with the 6 because it just doesn't work. That's interesting. It started to rip up my paper. And this is really good quality cardstock. This is, I think, the Nina Solar White. I have never had that with Copics. I wonder if it's because of the bullet nib, and I don't feel like I was pushing super hard, but that is like, that has torn away the top layer of the cardstock right there in that little circle. That's what you see, that dark edge is where that paper is torn up. So interesting, because I color sometimes 2, 3, 4 layers with my Copics over an image, and I've never had that happen. Especially not with a high quality cardstock like that. I've never had it with cheap cardstock either, but I would not expect that from a good quality cardstock. So that has to be because of the bullet nib maybe. And admittedly, I'm not used to using them anymore. It's been probably 10 years since I used them, but anyway, let's move on. For her wing, I'm going to have the same problem as I had with the Five Below set. There's just not a light enough blue. But I guess we're going to go in with the turquoise blue and see if we can soften it with the Colorless Blender at least. So just go ahead and add in a little bit of shadow. Although this is going to be hard to blend out because it's just too dark. The Colorless Blender only softens the edge of something, and it's best, you know, when used with light colors for that. But we'll give it a shot. Just adding a little bit of darkness back behind her, where that would be, you know, her body would be casting a shadow. Let's grab this 0 marker and see what happens. So I'm just kind of going right over the edge and trying to pull it into the white cardstock. But because that blue is so dark, you can see that it's blooming, like the alcohol is pushing that marker away, but it's not in a soft way because the shade I'm trying to do this to is just too dark. So again, not super effective. But it's the best that I can do with the supplies at hand, you know. Yeah, that looks terrible. It looks absolutely terrible. Let's just color in her collar with just this one 84. There's nothing to blend it with, so we'll just color it in solid. Alright, so let's try some of the greens for the leaves. We've got a little bit of a range here. Like I said, these two are a bit too similar, but maybe we can use these 3 here. I'm hoping that we'll have better luck with the next set, which is going to be Ohuhus. I have never tried those markers, but I know a lot of people have recommended them to me and asked me to review them. And I never was interested in doing it because I didn't want to spend the money to buy another set of markers when I absolutely love my Copics. And, you know, I would rather invest in more Copics or more refills for my Copics or whatever than buying another set of markers just to test it out. But this opportunity came up where Heather was willing to lend me her supplies, and that turned out to be perfect because I don't have to put the investment in of purchasing these markers, but I can still try them out for you guys and see how they work. So I'm blending out the 43 Deep Olive Green, which is not olive in any way, but anyway, and I'm blending that out with the 48 Yellow Green, and this seems to be alright, not too bad. Just go ahead and add a little bit to the rest of these. And then we'll come in with the 45 Canaria Yellow. And again, this is not a bad blend. We are having a little bit of blooming because there is still quite a bit of difference between these two shades and the darker green. So it is starting to push back and create that kind of mottled look. because there's just too much light colored alcohol. It's pushing away the darker pigments in this darker green. But maybe if we do a second layer on here, it'll smooth things out a bit. So we'll just try that quickly. Yeah, there's just some areas that are just not blending well. And I don't know, I mean, part of it is, you know, the colors themselves, but it may also just be the quality of the markers. They may not be up to snuff. These are 48 markers for $13, and that's pretty darn cheap. So I don't know how well these were made, but those are pretty much the only greens we've got, other than just the Vivid Green 46, which is not dark enough to make any kind of contrast between that and the 43. So that's the best result that I can get from the greens that are available in this set. Let's try the flowers. All right, for the flowers, there's not a lighter blue in this range to make anything, unless I go from like a dark blue into a turquoise, which we could try. We'll go from the Prussian blue to the sky blue to the pastel blue. Let's try that. I'm really trying to find like the best arrangement I can. So let's just go in with just a little bit of this. It's very dark, so we're only gonna add a little bit. Put a touch on the underside. And then for this one, we'll just put a little bit at the base. Then I'll come in with this 76 sky blue. Just pull that color out a little bit more. Trying to color it in a similar way that I did on the similar flowers on the first sheet, again, just so we have a good comparison. And then let's try the 87 pastel blue in here. And as far as like the colors, it's actually not terrible. But again, I can see some immediate blooming happening. So these markers do not want to blend naturally. Do you see how, you know, just all around the edges, this is like just pushing that color all over the place. And this is good thick cardstock, so it has enough, you know, space in the paper to blend. Those markers should not be, you know, bleeding through onto my work surface. They will be bleeding through to the back, as all alcohol markers do and should. But this is a very thick quality paper, so it should not be bleeding all the way through to my desk, which it's not. And actually, it's not even that bad on the back side. More on her face, because I really went over that heavy and tried to blend that out. But yeah, it's not bad. So it's not the paper, it's the markers themselves. And in case you're thinking that just the strokes themselves are kind of odd at first, you know, I have done this technique and it has worked before with Copic. So here's a card that I've done in the past using the same exact images that I've used in these two videos, and you know, I've done that where I've pulled the lines down to give the flower kind of like a little bit of a shape to it, but you know, these markers just blended and I had a better variety of colors. It's just not, the same technique is not working with these markers. So it's not, you know, the coloring style exactly, it's the markers themselves, because I've done it successfully many times in the past. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that to clarify in case, you know, it was just looking a little weird to you, which it definitely does in today's video. All right, we'll test out the reds. I guess we'll go from carmine to French vermilion to vermilion. And we'll use these for our little ladybug down here. I tried to think of images that would show off all the different ranges of colors, so that's why I added the little ladybug. I'm going to start with the darkest carmine. Just add a little bit of darkness there. Then we'll go with the French vermilion. And then the vermilion. And that wasn't terrible, but it also was a very small image, so that blends a little bit better. But I really don't see like a super shadow in there. It's more of just like a medium and light, because these two are not different enough. And then I guess we'll try the oranges. I think I've got to go back to the vermilion and then the orange. And I honestly don't know what else to even blend out with that, because the 34 yellow is almost the same shade, so there's no point in even bringing that in. So I guess we're just going to do a 2-color blend on this smaller little flower here. Just touch in with the vermilion. This time I'm adding my darkness to the outer part of the leaf, or petals, I mean. And then kind of blend toward the center. I mean, it doesn't look like much. I guess we can try the yellow ochre, the 101. But I think that's going to make it too dull. But without something to soften, it kind of just looks kind of weird. Okay, I guess that's not like the worst thing in the world. Am I happy with it? No, but it's better than it could be. And then for the bee, I guess we'll go with 44, 37, which is not any lighter, but the other ones are kind of brownish. And I guess we'll use yellow ochre. I don't want the 2 browns, and those are almost identical as well. Olive green is definitely not the right tone. And let's see, I guess I'm just going to color right over the lines, because I'm going to color them in black in a minute anyway, and that'll go over the yellow. So no, I don't like that at all. So we're on to the grays, which I am relieved about, because at least I know that there is a range here. I think we'll do warm grays on one and cool grays on the other, just so that you see both in action. All right, so we'll do that first, and then just a touch in the spots. And then the 4 as the mid-tone. Staying away from that eye. We're going to definitely put the lightest color over the eye so that it hopefully doesn't get lost. Alright, so that's not terrible, but again, we've got some blooming here. Like, those colors did not want to blend, and they should, because there's enough of a difference. They're close enough, but not too close. So that should have blended well, which leads me to think that these markers are just not the best quality, because there's no reason that those shades should not have blended. So we're going to go more in the mid-range for this, and I'm actually going to throw this green gray 5 in there too, just to see how that looks. Since they put it in the set, let's see what it blends with. So I've got CG3, GG5, and CG7, and we will start here right behind the head and do every other stripe. So there's not a huge amount to show it, but alright, and that was fine. Those worked together fine. I'm just going to finish up his wings. I'm not going to even bother with the rosy cheeks on the bee or the ladybug, which I normally would, but I already know that that lighter pink is not going to show up and the other pinks are too bright, so there's no point. Just try to throw a little bit of color on here so it looks complete. But yeah, I definitely am not a fan of this set. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I hate to have two videos back to back where I was not a fan of these marker sets, but that's just the case. I've got to be honest in my opinion, and I'm sure you can tell from the results that this is just not a great set. Even though it is inexpensive, the quality is just not there, and the range of colors is just not there. Even though at first glance it might seem like there's a lot, there's just too many duplicates and not enough like color families. I mean, I don't even know, like somebody left a comment on my previous video that maybe these markers sets aren't meant for the intense coloring that, you know, crafters, card makers do. Maybe it's just more for coloring books and stuff, but I don't know how you would even color a person in a coloring book with this. If that's the intention, just to use them in coloring books, tell me how you're going to get a better face than this. I mean, I don't see it, you know? So no matter what the intention is behind these markers, I still don't see them as quality. And just because they're cheap doesn't mean that it's a good option if you don't have a budget, you know? As far as this, I wouldn't waste my money. I don't see that these are gonna give good results to anybody. Yeah, sorry to have another video that's kind of a downer, but that is my opinion. I just am not a fan at all of these markers. By the way, this particular brand that Heather ordered now has a different name. It looks exactly the same, but the name on the barrel is different. Like in her order history, it has changed. So I'm just linking to that one in the description bar in case anybody still wants to pick it up. I don't know why you would, but anyway, it'll be there for you if you need it. So yeah, I'm not going to belabor this. We're just gonna close this video out. So thank you so much for watching and spending time with me, and I hope you have a good one, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one with better results. So I'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.